Hello everybody, Beard Reads Books here, and welcome to this week's Saturday book review video. And this week I'm going to be reviewing this classic little book, Back to the Future. It's a novel by George Gipe, based on a screenplay by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. Now, I reckon it's safe to say the vast majority of you will know the basic storyline for Back to the Future, about a kid called Marty McFly from 1985 who gets stuck back in 1955. So yeah, it's a time machine that was built by his friend Doc Brown into a DeLorean, powered by plutonium. And Doc Brown got the plutonium from terrorists. He ripped them off, and at the start of the film, when him and Marty are doing time machine experiments, the terrorists turn up, and in order to escape from them, Marty McFly jumps into the DeLorean and drives away, and ends up travelling back to the 1950s. But of course, he's escaped from the terrorists, he's only had enough plutonium to make a one-way trip, so he's stuck in 1955 with no plutonium to get him back. So he has to rely on the 1955 counterpart of Doc Brown to help him get back to 85. And they do so by, because there was a thunderstorm in 55 that lightning hit the clock tower. And what they basically do is they utilize the power from that lightning strike to power the DeLorean back to 85. But of course, the bulk of the story is sort of Marty McFly being stuck back in the 50s for about a week or so, and what happens to him back in 1955. Very basically, he bumps into his parents. This is when they're sort of in 17, same age as he is in 85, and his mum-to-be ends up falling in love with Marty instead of his dad. So what Marty basically has to do is he has to try and make sure that his parents get together so that him and his older siblings still get married, still get born. So it's like this. Yeah, so the basic storyline is all about how him and Doc Brown are working out like to get him back to 85, and also about him making sure that his mum and dad sort of get together and get married and have children and all the rest. Now this book, this is based on an early script of the film, so it's not actually based on the script that finally got turned into the film. And I have seen online that it was written whilst Eric Stoltz was still on board. For those of you that don't know, when the film was going into production, right from the start, they wanted Michael J. Fox to play Marty McFly, but at the time he was heavily committed with the TV show Family Ties, and so he wasn't able to commit to making the film. So they cast Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly and actually did quite a bit of filming with him in that role, but it wasn't quite working out. So what they ended up doing was they managed to arrange the shooting schedule so that Michael J. Fox could sort of come on board and play Marty McFly while still being committed to doing Family Ties. So like I said, this book was written during the period when Eric Stoltz was still on board. And I mean, for the most part, this is quite close to like the film, what we see on the film. There are a few differences. I mean, the character of Marty McFly in the book is quite a bit. There is quite a few differences between him and the sort of the film version of Marty McFly. And I mean, there's at one point in the book, Marty McFly when he's stuck in the 50s, he goes into a movie theatre to see a film. I just can't imagine the film version sort of doing that, going into a theatre. And because I knew that this book was written whilst Eric Stoltz was still on board for like as a Marty McFly character, reading the book, I very much had Eric Stoltz in mind as Marty McFly, and that combined with the fact that the character Marty McFly's character in the book is a bit different to what he is in the film. So my headcanon for it is the book is in a very close parallel universe to the sort of the film version. So I kind of I kind of imagine this, yeah, the book being a story about where Eric Stoltz is the character, Marty McFly character, and that to me in my head canon, that kind of explains how they explains the way the slight differences in the between the character in the book and the character in the film. I mean, one difference that didn't really sit with me, it niggled me a tiny bit. Towards the end of the book, it's where Marty McFly and the 1955 Doc Brown, they're setting up the cable in that runs from the clock tower down to the lamppost that they're going to use to harness the lightning bolt, the power of the lightning bolt. They're chatting away to each other, and so they're all talking about the possibility of, well, what happens if it doesn't work, blah blah blah, and all that. And I mean, it's almost a throwaway line, but Doc Brown sort of turns around to Mike McFly and kind of says, "Why don't you just stay in 55?" And bearing in mind the fact that Doc Brown, he's very conscientious of not disrupting the timeline, not causing a temporal paradox. He wants to minimise that as much as possible. I just can't imagine him being as flippant as to make the comment, "Oh, why don't you stay in 55? 50s, and just stay here and live out your life here." That seemed like a very out of character comment. So yeah, that niggled me a tiny bit. But apart from that, this is a very enjoyable book. It, like I say, for the most part, it is pretty close to the film. And George Gipe, he did a he did a reasonably good job of writing it. Now the next two books, like part 2 and 3, they were written by. If I just lean down and grab it, I've got book 2 here. They were written by Craig Shaw Gardner. Now I personally feel that Craig Shaw Gardner was a better pair of hands to do the novelizations than George Gipe was. I mean, George Gipe, he did a good job of doing the first book, but Craig Shaw Gardner, he did a really good job of parts 2 and 3. So, but I mean, I am going to be doing book reviews of the next 2 books at some point. Well, in fact, Back to Future Part 2, that's going to be my next book review, so keep your eyes open for that next week. So, I mean, George Gipe, he could have done a better job, but the job he did do was good enough for me personally, anyway. And one thing I will say though is, I think this must be a pretty hard to come by book. Well, I mean, I didn't find many copies available online, and this copy here that I got, including postage and packaging, I spent the best part of 30 quid on it. So, I mean, I personally was happy to pay that because I'm a bit of a completionist. So I thought, well, I've got books 2 and 3. Yeah, books 2 and 3, they're a lot less than 30 odd quid, so they're a lot cheaper. So I had those 2 books, and being a bit of a completionist, I thought I want to get this book as well. So when I saw it was about 30, best part of 30 quid, like, yeah, go on then, I'll pay it, so. But I mean, that's probably more than what some people would want to pay. So I will just say that copies of this book are a bit on the pricey side. But I mean, overall, overall, it's a good read. It's a lot better than some time travel books that I've read. But then, in fairness, that is because it's based on a pretty stellar film, you know. So, when you're writing a novelisation of a really, really good film, you'd be hard pushed to make a complete hash of it. So, yeah. So, my review of this book could have been a bit better, but it's good enough. It's good enough. So, yes. Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this little book review. If you've read it, let me know what you thought of it. Drop me a comment down below. I'd be happy. I'd like to hear your views of the book and what you thought of it and all the rest. And obviously, I'm going to be reviewing books 2 and 3 at some point in the future. And I'm also going to be doing Wednesday film reviews on the Back to the Future films as well. They're talking about them, so keep your eyes open for them. Well, on that happy note, I'm going to bring this little video to an end, guys. I hope you've enjoyed. Look forward to seeing you next Saturday for my next book review video. And in the meantime, guys, sorry, kicked a stand there. And in the meantime, guys, take care and happy reading.